Okay, so for our last handout, 13H, we're just going to talk about how the different spinal nerves branch off the spinal cord. They can do it in a couple different ways. They can branch out in a nerve network where a bunch of nerves come off together. That's called a plexus. Or they can branch off singly, and you'll just have one nerve or one main nerve branching off of the spinal cord. So let's look at our handout 13H. Oops, that's not it. So here it is. And this is going to focus on these nerve networks called a plexus. And so a nerve plexus, it says it's the joining of the ventral rami of spinal nerves to form these nerve networks known as plexuses. We actually have four major plexuses. We have one in our neck, we have one in the shoulder, and then our lower back and our sacrum all have these nerve networks. So if you look, perhaps I'll zoom in. This is an example of a plexus here. Let's get it in focus. Okay, so if you look at this, you can see this is our spinal nerves branching off the spinal cord. So here's C1, C2, C3, etc. And as they branch off, their ventral rami all start fusing together. So you can see that we end up with this net of nerves that are all joining. Now, these nerve networks, these plexuses, are going to give rise to larger nerves that come off of them and go to the body. All right. So we have these different plexuses in our neck, shoulder, lower back, and sacrum. There are no plexuses in the thoracic region. So the spinal nerves that are branching off of your spinal cord in the thorax, where your ribs are, there's one major nerve that branches off and follows the ribs. So those 12 spinal nerves that are coming off the thoracic region don't have a plexus. Let's look at the plexuses kind of individually, and I'm going to show you some major nerves that come off of them. All right. So for example here, I suppose I should zoom out just a little bit. But for example here, we have what's called the cervical plexus. This is in our neck. So between cervical vertebrae C1 and C4, we have this cervical plexus. So we have this nerve network that's coming off of the nerve branches up high in our neck, the cervical plexus. One of the major nerves that comes off of the cervical plexus is this nerve called the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve comes off of the cervical plexus and it goes all the way down to your diaphragm, and it innervates the diaphragm. So it sends signals to your diaphragm. And remember, the diaphragm is very important in breathing. In fact, you can't breathe without an operating diaphragm. So if the diaphragm is not working, a person cannot survive. So this phrenic nerve, if it's broken, if this phrenic nerve isn't working, the person cannot survive. So this is why you have to break, if someone breaks their neck, I should say, if they break it above this phrenic nerve and the cervical nerve plexus, they won't survive. Now, right below it, from C5 to T1, is what we call the brachial plexus, and this is in your shoulders. And these plexus, or this plexus, I should say, gives a lot of rise to nerves that go into our shoulder and arms. So the brachial plexus gives rise to our axillary nerve, to the ulnar nerve, which is going to be our funny bone, the radial nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, and the median nerve. So I have a couple PowerPoints that'll talk about these here in our next video. But the median nerve goes down to your hand. It's responsible for carpal tunnel syndrome. Your ulnar nerve goes down through your elbow to your hand. It's responsible for your funny bone. So it just says that this brachial plexus innervates the upper body and arms. And this is why we have a plexus to begin with, because you have a bunch of nerve systems that are going into the large area of our body. And so not only do we have a cervical swelling of the spinal cord in this region, but we have this plexus coming off that allows for a lot of nerves to get into our arms. Right? And since we don't have arms and legs in the thoracic region, we're going to have no plexus in the thoracic region. The next plexus will be in the lumbar. So again, we have a lumbar swelling of the spinal cord, which gives rise to all of these nerve plexuses that are going to innervate our leg. So it says the lumbar vertebrae are from L1 to L5. So they actually go beyond where the spinal cord ends at L2. But they give rise to big nerves like the femoral nerve and the obturator nerve. If you think about that obturator foramen in your os coxa, this nerve goes through there. So it says it innervates the nerve, our genitals, and the lower extremities, our legs and feet. The sacral plexus is also a bunch of branches that are coming off the sacrum, and they are from S1 to S5. And the big nerve that comes off the sacral plexus is the sciatic nerve. And the sciatic nerve runs down the back of your leg and innervates your legs. Again, we'll talk about some of these examples, like I'm going to talk about the sciatic nerve and then some of these brachial nerves in some PowerPoints to wrap up the chapter. But that is the 4 plexuses that are located in our spinal nerves. And so that kind of summarizes the big picture of spinal nerves. In the next video, kind of to summarize the chapter and end everything, we're going to give some examples of these big nerves that are coming off of these plexuses. And then we'll wrap up the chapter and we'll get ready for chapter 14. All right, so I will see you all later. Have a good day.